Hello everyone, and welcome back to another homebrew workshop type video. This time we're going to look at the Calligraphers Supplies. Now, what do we know about Calligraphers Supplies in D&D? What we already know is that it's a tool, it's worth 10 gold pieces, and it weighs 5 pounds. Now, it does have a very specific note. These tools include items needed to pursue a craft or trade. So, that's even more interesting for how we can make this into a system that supports an artisan within the world of D&D. So, what are our objectives for the video here? Our objectives are Objective 1. Make a system of rules for calligrapher supplies that allows a calligrapher to earn money as kind of a trade, because it's specifically called out within the D&D rule set in the DM's guide and the player's guide. Now, the other objective, Objective 2, is to make it a little bit more interesting for real-world play. How do you, as an adventurer on the road, utilize this set of tools and actually make them fun to have or a part of your character versus just a thing you kind of know how to use? So, let's take a look at what we can do for Objective 1. For Objective 1, what I ended up settling on is commissions. Commissions utilize your calligrapher supplies skill based off of an available job market. Now, that hits a few of us to our core, right? But the available job market is based off of a table as outlined here. This is kind of a list of 6 different potential jobs that you have whenever you enter a settlement or anything else. And this is kind of all of the jobs that you would have on a daily basis. So at your DM's discretion, you can roll each day 3d6. The outcome of each individual d6 on this table being any of the jobs available in that day's market. So this is probably most commonly used or most applicable for downtime. If you were to skip a week and say, all right, you guys are going to be in this town for about a week's worth of time and do what you would like in this window, let me know what you want to do. This is what you can end up wanting to do, is say, hey, I want to go and see if anybody needs a calligrapher right now. And from there, you roll your 3d6, and you can see what different job class that there is available. A journal transcription could be translating something from one language to another. It could be taking something from one unprofessional material and turning it into a professional material, that kind of thing. And all you really have to do is, if you are going to take the job that's a journal transcription, take the required hours of work, which you roll as 2d8, and then take that and just know, hey, for this day, I'm going to be spending 2d8 hours, or I'm going to be spending, for multiple days, 2d8 hours worth of time doing just this. And then you get paid 1d4 times 10 gold pieces per hour. Simple enough. Now, there is a little bit of a caveat based off of some of the stuff that you do have within here. There is the Magical Scroll Commission. This is going to tie in a little bit more to our other objective as well. But Magical Scrolls can be created using Calligrapher Supplies. You do have to be able to spend a little bit more time and money, but at the same time, you have the ability to imbue a scroll with magic. Now, part of that caveat is that you have to look at the spell level and for the spell that you want to cast. Now, it could be a simple first level spell, and in this case, for the example, that's what I'll work with. If you were approached by a mage that says, hey look, I'm going to need you to make me a spell scroll for the shield spell. It's a first level spell, just make that for me. I'm busy. Then you're like, alright, okay. You're going to spend 1d4 plus 2 hours based off of that one spell level. If it was a second level spell, then it would be 1d4 plus 2, and then another 1d4 plus 2. Just to kind of highlight the greater difficulty it takes. And then you get paid for each hour within that window. 5d4 times 10. So you can get paid quite a bit for making these scrolls, but it does take a little bit more time and a little bit more materials. The materials aren't necessarily that big of an issue in your downtime here, but they will be for the other kind of active production solution here. Now, what you do have to be able to do is have the ability to cast the spell you're hired to make within the scroll. So if you need to create that shield spell and you do not have the shield spell, then you have to be able to have someone that can cast the shield spell, that can cast it reliably into the spell scroll at least once per 24 hours. If it's going to take you multiple days to be able to make this spell scroll, you need to have someone that has said, yes, I will commit to actually casting this spell slot on a regular basis until you're done. And that gets a little bit more trouble, gets to be a little bit more difficult thing for active production. But in this case, in the world, you kind of have the ability to work with a local mage or whoever else might need the job done, and then find somebody that can cast the spell to do it for you. Additionally, some of the other caveats that we have is, as a calligrapher, you do have to be able to read and write the language requested for the commission, even to even like attempt the job. So if there's a orc that wants you to translate something from common into orcish for his family or his tribe, or a noble that wants that done for a posting that they can send as a missive to a raiding orc clan, if you don't speak orc, then you're not really going to be helpful. So it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge, and that ends up being kind of up to your DM as a discretionary thing. Is you can either not take the job, or you could try to find somebody that does speak orcish, and then potentially it's a bigger thing, right? It's, how do I find someone that can help me, and then maybe you take a little bit more time, but then you finish it in enough time. Additionally, these commission jobs can be completed on the road as long as they do get returned to the commissioner. The commissioner does, in the world, want the stuff done in a relatively timely manner, and so they aren't necessarily going to be as happy if you take it on the road and come back months later and you're like, alright, here's the thing you wanted 3 months ago, and then they're like, well, I hired somebody else to do this, so sorry. Because then they just don't pay you. While you're on the road, you can take a few different activities to create items that can be used or sold for a typical gold piece value. Basically, as you're on the road, you can do a few things to make a little bit of money, to make an item that you can sell within town. So, of these three things, looking at the active production table, you can make 3 potential objects. You can make an adventure log, a manuscript, or a spell scroll. Now, they all work a little bit differently. An adventures log is a record of only the last 24 hours worth of time. And these adventures logs can be collected into a collection that has an inherent value total of the combined adventure logs. So 2 combined adventure logs is worth 20 gold pieces, and 5 adventure logs is worth 50 gold pieces, and then you can kind of make it into a larger collection of stories of everything that you've done on your adventures. Otherwise, manuscripts can be pure works of fiction or a log of real-world events, and these manuscripts can also be combined to produce additional values like adventure logs. Picture the fact that if at this point you're effectively just an author, and you're writing a book series while you're on the road, drawing inspiration from the world around you as you go, which is an interesting enough character, because at that point you're saying, alright, well, I would be very interested in being an author, and you could basically make your character Stephen King trying to walk his way through a fantasy world and create book stories based off of the things that he's seeing. Maybe you draw inspiration from the horrible situation of a village being attacked by gnolls. You're like, ooh, this could be a really good horror story. And then starting to write it, and it's like, oh, you know, poor taste, let's deal with it first, and, you know, and all of those kinds of things. Or perhaps you're just actually Gilderoy Lockhart, where as opposed to being a hero to some extent, you're more of a coward, and you're taking the adventures that you and the rest of your party are going on, not being as helpful in fighting them, but being more helpful in the research and observation, in filling that role, and then writing the book as if you were always a part of the big fight and a hero at the very end. Those kinds of things make it interesting, and then you can make a few different books in this series and have more gold pieces as a reward. Spell scrolls, otherwise, because you now are on the road, as opposed to just using the other rules, they use the additional rules from the downtime window, but it's 1d4 plus 2 hours and 50 gold pieces per spell level to be transcribed. Otherwise, let's take a look at the final details of active production. Active production is reliant on quality. Quality is how you can determine whether or not something is more or less valuable, or if a spell scroll is easier or harder to use. Quality is a simple d20 roll, and you can add your proficiency bonus if you're proficient with Calligraphers Supplies. Looking at this quality table, if you were to roll at the very worst a 0 to a 4, it is of poor quality and it's worth 50 less gold pieces in the long run. So at that point, it's the equivalent of, do I crumple it up or do I keep it because I guess it's on paper somehow, or do you start over? Or you could roll very, very well and do 20 to 25 or higher, in which case it is an exceptional quality item, and it is worth an additional 50 gold pieces. This means that if you were to make a adventure log that takes an hour of work and is 10 gold pieces for supply costs and then 10 gold pieces in value, you can end up increasing its value by that plus 50 to have 160 gold piece adventure log, and then compile that into a number of other adventure logs, and it's worth way more. Now, quality plays a little bit more heavy of a role on spell scrolls. When you're attempting to use a spell scroll for a spell that you do not have as part of your spell list that was produced at any quality, the user must make an Arcana check against the magic scroll's DC. The DC is affected by the quality of the scroll itself. Now, each magic scroll has its own DC as listed out on the regular D&D magic scroll table. Now, a poor quality scroll will increase that DC by a plus 5, and an exceptional quality scroll will decrease that DC by a negative 5. So it makes it possible for somebody to cast a spell, or it makes it impossible for somebody to cast a spell. If they fail this kind of Arcana check, they lose the scroll as it turns to ash, and the user must make an intelligence saving throw, and that is a DC of 10 plus the spell's level plus any of your applicable quality modifiers. Then you can, as outlined on page 200 of the basic rules, they roll on the scroll mishap table. This means that as you get to be better and better in terms of quality, with your proficiency bonus going up, you can end up having higher and higher value to the point where it's almost impossible to create a poor quality or a low quality item. And then from there, you just have a lot easier to use magic scrolls that you can produce and have your party use. And at this point, you basically can have somebody where, you all have a scroll of Fireball that is very easy to use, and then you just nuke the place. You're like, I saw a big giant spider in that house, we're going to burn it down. And then you do. And it makes it very powerful from a calligraphy standpoint to be able to have spells at your beck and call. That's it for the Calligraphers Supplies. Thank you all for watching this video. I know it's a little bit long, but if you look in the link, there's a link in the description that has the Calligraphers Supplies as a Google document in terms of a rule set that's available for everyone to use. Otherwise, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!